That's it. Welcome, everyone. Please use the chat box just to introduce yourselves, or your name, where you're located, who you work for, and the most important thing you want to take away from this session. So Belinda's going to be doing most of the talking. I'll be monitoring the chat box. Hope you're all safe and well and enjoying well, somewhat more relaxed rules in the UK. I think that's probably true of everywhere. And this is an interactive session, so I invite you to keep your microphones turned on and your cameras turned on if you have them. I'm guessing you can all hear and see me. Many of you are going to be Zoom experts by now, so probably not a lot of housekeeping needed. Just a reminder that the session is being recorded and it's going to be shared with others who've booked but can't attend the live event. So just be mindful of that when sharing any information or asking a question. We've only got 30 minutes. That'll go really quickly, so I'll keep a pretty tight rein on timing. But we'll make sure that the recording is available on our YouTube channel. You'll get an automatic link to that with a follow-up email, and that'll have the slide deck as well, so you'll get a copy of the slides we're using. So just to quickly share my screen and to introduce who we are. So let me just bring the presenters into view. That's me on the left. So I'm the CEO of the online business, which of course has the flagship brand of Click 360. Belinda is one of our most experienced lead facilitators and 360 feedback coaches. Now, she also delivers our coach accreditation program, and we'll mention that towards the end. This is the penultimate session of 9 group mentoring sessions that are designed to share best practice when it comes to a 360 implementation. And if you haven't done so already and you've just joined, please use the chat box to introduce yourselves and let us know what you want to get out of this session. You can jump in verbally anytime you like. Just wait for Belinda to take breath, and then if you've got a question or a suggestion or comment, that's the way to do it. If you want to write something in the chat box, and we'll bring that up at the end, that's fine too. So how we want to work with you, we're going to deliver pretty short bursts of information accompanied by 1 or more slides, and then we're just going to sort of open up the floor to you guys for questions, comments, observations, suggestions, etc. So before I pass over to Belinda, let me just position where this session fits in to the overall scheme of things. I've got camera views on the left, so I'm just moving those because I want to be over here. Now, I'm not sure if you're going to see this on the video, but what I'm doing is trying to point it with my cursor to the fact that we've generated the reports. We've already covered the first feedback coaching session. You may remember that Belinda ran a session a couple of weeks ago around that. And then we invite people to check out their feedback. So in the closing moments of this session, we're coaching people how to check out feedback verbally. Remember, with with a representative proportion of the Rater network. And then when that's done, and to the extent to which that's been done, we're getting more depth, more clarity, more granularity, more rich data. And that means that when it comes to this feedback coaching session, there's a lot better data to work with. That's why we do the checking out process. So there you go. That's where this session fits into the overall implementation plan. And I'm now going to pass over to Belinda to continue. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then let Belinda take the reins. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Colin. I'm now going to share my screen. And I can't do that at the moment. It's a message is coming up for me, Colin. Host disabled, attendee screen shaving. So
okay, we've done that again. Let me just make you the host. There we go. You should be able to do it now.
and you should be on the slide that you've just
Yep, we can see it.
seen. Great. So as Colin has very accurately sort of said where we are in the process of doing these sessions, and I also see that we've got Mark that's just joined us, so welcome, Mark. So in terms of what we will cover today in this session, we want to very much look at this from the coach's point of view. What's our role in doing this second feedback session? And in terms of this second session, the focus is really on action planning. By the end of the session, we want the participant to be ready to complete their plan. So they may be coming to us with some ideas in terms of what they want to, where they want to focus. Very much hope that they've done some reflection, but they may not have taken it that stage further in terms of thinking about, well, how are they going to address and meet those needs? So we're going to look at what is our role. We're going to look at how we prepare best for that session, and then how we facilitate it. So in terms of thinking about what is my role, from your perspectives, Maxine and Mark, what do you see as being the role of the coach in this session?
So I'll go first. Thanks for the question. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
very well, thank you.
Great. So thanks for the question, Belinda. So I see that my role as a coach in this session is to really help our client participant navigate their way through the feedback to an action plan, but also to draw the links directly between what was given and how they're immediately going to day-to-day live that out. So I'm thinking of some of the daily activities, but I also think dealing a little bit with some of the emotion maybe that might be associated with it, because this part of the the end part of this sort of section I suppose could be quite weighty given what people have received, and I've just recently experienced that in helping someone with the feedback an action plan, which is why I asked the question, but I'll come back to telling you about that just now.
Okay, all right, thank you, Maxine. Mark, is there anything you want to add?
Great. Have I lost everyone?
No, you're with
we
us.
can hear you. Yep.
I think I might have lost everyone.
No, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, okay. yes, I can now. Sorry, we seem to be having a few technical difficulties. I'm thinking, and please correct me, I'm thinking so the role of the coach in this is to talk the victim, shall we say, through the feedback that they've received, and try to help them come to terms with what they've received and what to do, how to interpret, how to understand, and by asking them, mostly about asking questions and listening to their answers rather than necessarily giving answers and coming up with suggestions.
Yeah, I think I would very much agree with you in the sense that I think very much the first session that we do in terms of when they initially get the report and we're initially doing the debrief, a lot of the focus in that session is helping them navigate the report, helping them appreciate what is actually being said. And I think in this session, this is really where the coaching skills, I think, really come into play. It's about helping them, as Maxine said, about dealing with some of the emotional issues, which may, and their reactions, which may well have developed since they started reflecting on the report. And so we're helping them process, we're helping them make the links. So in terms of the specifics for this session, I think it is about making sure the development areas are going to be the things that are going to make the biggest difference for them. They're going to get their return on investment. And sometimes that actually isn't addressing the very big dinosaur in the room. Sometimes it might actually be by tweaking a strength and using the strength in a different way, which can be simpler in many ways to implement, but actually could bring greater rewards. I think we also want the focus to be on outcomes as well as the actions. What is it that they want to change? Fast forward 6 months, how do they want things to be different? What would be the impact of that? So bringing it back to that return on investment and encouraging them to really think broadly about the activities they can do to develop themselves and focus in on the development area. I think we're moving away from thinking that courses are the only way to address development areas, but for some people that is their first point of call. And I think also it's important that we help the participant think about how they can build in future reflection markers. We don't want this to be just a line in the sand. Feedback taken is taken at one point in time, but where it becomes really valuable is we keep reflecting and seeing how we're building on things and the progress that we're making. So I see our role as also helping the participant identify how they can do that. So in terms of thinking about preparing for the session, some of these points we would have covered in the first feedback session, thinking about the length, the setting, technology, all those things about how we're going to deliver it. But I think also it's important that we go back and remind ourselves of the themes that came out from that first session. What were in our notes? What were we initially thinking and concluding? What were the things that the participant was saying at that point in time? Because it gives us a point to refer back to and to gently challenge and support them as they go through and start drawing their conclusions. Is there anything else that you would particularly do to prepare for the session yourselves? No? Nothing else specific? Maxine?
So I was just going to say that for myself, it's really just making myself quite familiar, especially with the end part of the report. So I find, forget actually what the heading is, but it's like from around page 24 onwards, sort of like where the summary is. And for the particular session or person that I'm dealing with, I'd want to kind of be, I suppose it goes without saying, very familiar, but I'd want to understand pain points quite clearly.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
One thing I'd want to be sure is that I'm familiar with some of the career history and CV of this person background to be able to place some things perhaps in the proper context.
Okay, and how do you find that helps you? What difference does that make for you when you're facilitating this session?
It helps if someone has perhaps sort of had a role change in the recent history, or taken has someone who's come from a different discipline perhaps and is now doing something else, or something with someone who's newly in a leadership position, for example. So just be aware of that. As you're going through to be aware of that situation, especially if something has changed, sort of within the recent period.
Okay, so that you're starting to build your own interpretation of what's in the report.
Not so much about my interpretation, but to understand perhaps some more context which the report wouldn't have.
Yeah. So it's that context which maybe helps us be able to probe, to be able to check, and particularly when we're looking at the outcomes that somebody wants, appreciating why something is of greater importance than something else to them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Mark. And Habiba, please do feel free to join in the discussion as and when you feel appropriate.
I don't know if you can read the chat box, Belinda, but Habiba has actually put a comment in there. Can you see it?
I can't see it. I've got the slideshow on.
Don't worry.
Okay. So,
Hi,
hello
Habiba.
everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just saying that I send the results to them in advance, and then I ask them to also send me their reactions in advance to help me prepare. And I
Right.
normally ask them, what do they find surprising? What do they disagree about? And
Okay.
what do they want clarification on or want to explore further?
So just to recap where we are in this process, I'm just going back to this slide. We're assuming for this session here that we've already had one session with the client.
Okay.
We're assuming that we've already done the debrief with them. They're already familiar with the content and that they have had an opportunity to go away and do some more reflection. They may have had an opportunity to check out. So what we're looking for in this second session is to help them to move it on a stage further and think about, it's almost like the so what? What am I going to do with this? I've got all this information.
Yeah.
How can I make this, what's going to make the difference?
Yes.
And that's what this session is all about. So I don't disagree at all with what you're saying, but I just thought as it might be helpful just to position how we think about this particular second session.
Sorry for taking you back.
No problem at all. No problem.
Okay.
That's the whole point of this. It's meant to be sort of interactive and live. We'll deal with it, things as they come along. So we set the scene. And for me, I think setting the scene, as with any coaching session, I think it is about being clear about what outcomes are wanted from today. And as we've said, the outcome from this session is really to help the participant to be able to create and complete their own action plan. I always think it's important as well to do a reminder at this point about confidentiality, and just to remind the individual that whilst they may be required to share the development action plan with their line manager and elsewhere in the organisation, that the content of our discussion is confidential. I then move on to make inquiries about checking out. And if you didn't have an opportunity to join that session last week, you may well want to have a look at this. Checking out is about going back to some of your rater groups and saying to them, asking them some questions, saying to them what you have decided and from the data that you've had, that what you think is what's important, and about understanding from them what you would be doing differently if you were to address those development needs. And it's very interesting, I think, to ask the participant what checking out they have done. And some choose to do their checking out before this session, and I've also worked with participants who've chosen to do some checking out afterwards. Maybe they were overwhelmed actually by the volume of data. Maybe they were struggling to see clearly where they should focus, and they wanted this second session before they did that. So that would be the one thing I'd say about checking out. But do have a look at that webinar if you weren't able to attend it. And then it's about inviting them to share their reflections. Is there anything else they want to explore further? And I think, Maxine, this comes to the point at which you're saying that maybe sometimes people, when they reflect on it, they can actually be quite angry about some of the feedback. They can be quite disappointed by it. And really it's about, I think, our role then as facilitators and coaches is to help them understand what is happening for them. Understand what's important, why those perceptions might be as they are, and help them to unpack in some way. I think also it's about helping them through discussion on what their development areas are, why they've chosen the particular areas they have, and also maybe inquiring and checking that they are addressing what came across in that initial session as the development areas. Some people can start discounting, maybe start ignoring, particularly if it was difficult data for them to accept. Their blind spots were revealed. How does that sit with your experiences of running a similar session to this? Anyone want to come in on this? Maxine, anything you'd want to add?
No, Belinda, nothing much comes to mind. I think I just concur with everything that you're saying. It really is just meeting the individual where they're at, and maybe even not having too many preconceived plans. Just knowing that every reaction and every individual will take it differently, dependent on what is uncovered.
And I think, if anything, this is the session where the coaching skills really come into play, where we're playing back what we're seeing, we're having an open discussion around what's happening and how the person's experienced the data. Habiba, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to refer back to what Mark said about the context, because what I have found with their reflections is the more information we have about their context, we can actually probe and get them to a space where they can actually see things from someone else's perspective and not take the feedback personally, or perhaps see the nugget of truth in the feedback that they had wanted to reject.
Yes.
So I think as much context as we can get at that point, I think would be very useful.
Yeah. I think the context and also the outcomes. What is it that they're trying to achieve in their roles currently, and how is the perceptions that others have of them stopping them achieve it? And often I think when somebody is finding the information hard, that helps them to get through and to sort of accept the data more, and then start focusing in on, okay, what can I start to do to address some of this? So in terms of helping convert outcomes into actions, this is about very much looking at what are the interventions. And I would imagine you're probably familiar with the 70-20-10 rule, and the fact that 70% of the learning we learn from experience. So how best can we encourage our participants to develop in the workplace? What can they be doing there to help them develop? Mark, you clapped on that one. Is there anything you want to verbally add?
No, I love the slide. Can I borrow it, please?
Yeah, I think it's a great one because it really does drive it home, doesn't it?
No, it's exactly. It's just, it really gives you that really visual, sort of thing. You've got the learning event, someone's been to a course, as you say, and then, and the trick is to turn that into real action,
Yeah.
And vice versa also. I mean, I've coached many people in the past, especially from developing countries, and sort of the mental model for learning is flying somewhere and staying in a hotel and going on a course. Whereas so you've also got the 70-20-10 there, where 70% of your learning should be on the job, learning something new, being coached by somebody next to you, and just trying stuff out as a person. But so the mental model is that's not learning. Learning is flying on a plane and going to stay in a hotel, preferably in London, and
it's
going on a course. So having to
traditional way.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting, the pandemic and the situation we're in now, I think will bring around a shift to that mentality, away from that mentality. Through the fact that suddenly it's not going to be so feasible to be able to do some of these things. Something else that we could be thanking COVID for. So in terms of thinking about the next thing we would very much look at is once we've developed and helped their thinking in terms of what outcomes they want and the actions they could be taking, is actually getting them to think about the potential obstacles. what are going to be the barriers for them actually achieving what they want to achieve? And how could they overcome them? And what we find is that by addressing some of these things up front, it actually builds in some resilience into their plan. They start thinking about what they need to have in place in order to make their plan come alive and be more successful. So I just want to, before I would like to share with you, go back to the report quickly, which you will be familiar with.
Just to point out, I don't think Mark has necessarily seen our report. And Maxine, I think you work with the PDF version. Correct me if I'm wrong. You may have the digital version. I can't remember.
PDF, you're correct.
You have the PDF version, do you? Okay. What I will do, if this works, nothing works quite as seamlessly as you would hope sometimes.
Are you looking to share a digital report?
I was going to share a digital report, but technology is failing me, sorry. So I'm going to come back to the Zoom.
Okay.
Let me see if, oh, here we go. Apologies for that slight hiccup. Now, the reason why I want to share the digital report, and Maxine, if there is an opportunity maybe to look at the digital report and to consider using it, it may be worth a go to have a look at it, because what it has built into it is this workbook that enables the participant to do some more self-reflection on their own. And the reason I wanted to show you this to you is in advance of the session, this session, we can direct them to filling in this step 6, which helps them draw their conclusions about where they want to focus their development. And then what's built into it is a template for them to build their development action plan. And that covers some of the things that we've said in terms of success criteria. It also enables them to identify the support they need, the obstacles to their success, which we spoke about, and how they can overcome them, and then some measures about when they're going to complete things. And I just very quickly wanted to show you that to be able to share what is available on the digital report, as I do think it does have a very, very valuable use. Now, I am hoping that I can switch seamlessly to back to PowerPoint, and just really to conclude that the next session will very much build on that last point, which was about how can we get the participant to keep the plan alive and build in regular reviews, and also possibly to do some checking in, which Colin will talk more about next week at the session on Wednesday. That's sort of bringing us to an end of the session today. Are there any sort of final questions or comments from you? Anything on the chat box?
Nothing on the chat box that we haven't covered. Thank you, Belinda. So I don't think we can see that slide. I'm just trying to grab the screen back, but don't worry. If you just quickly stop sharing, that should be one option on your taskbar. Yep. Then you can go back to the slide. Okay, I can do that now. So if I just share, oh, there you go. You've got it. You've got it.
Yeah,
yep. That's it. Checking in. So that's next Wednesday. Belinda's right. We're going to look at ways of keeping the 360 alive and dynamic, you know, even months after the initial survey. So I'll talk through how checking in works in the physical world, but I'll also introduce you to a feature. Again, it's built into the digital report that allows this step to be carried out electronically. And that'll be our last session. So to book that, if you haven't already, please click on the link that you'll see in the final slide. Remember, you're going to get a copy of these slides as a follow-up. So I just want to thank Belinda for all her wisdom and sharing that. And also for you guys to turn up and to participate. Really appreciate that. Thank you. As ever, I wish you safety and wellness. And please follow the slightly more relaxed rules wherever you are. And we'll hopefully see you next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye for
That's
now.
great.
Okay, bye.
Thanks very
Thank
much,
you.
guys. Really appreciate
Bye.
it.
Bye.
Thank
you.
you very much.